What'd you think about Jameis Winston?
So a guy coming off the bench like that, it was very impressive. I don't necessarily think.
What'd you think about the rust factor? We've been hearing rust factor for other quarterbacks on this team, but
yeah,
he didn't seem to show much.
His accuracy was was on point. Like you can tell that there was a little discomfort in some of the the routes that were happening. I mean, I don't know whose fault those usually are. I don't know if the route was just run wrong or he misjudged it or whatever. But I like the fact that he hung in there in the pocket, because I think what was really missing is that when quarterback starts scrambling, you have too much territory to defend as that line.
Yeah.
If you can trust that the quarterback's going to stay where they're freaking at, I think it's a little bit easier to protect you know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're saying the offensive line looked a hell of a lot better too.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
And I know they got Wyatt Teller back. They moved DeJuan Jones over to the left tackle.
Can they keep moving him to the right a little bit?
He was so much better than on the right side. He stunk this whole year. But
I'm talking about to the bench. Keep moving.
No, he was great though. I know what you mean. Earlier in the year, I would have advocated for that, but you were. I know what you mean. He was really good though. So the Browns' offensive line looked the best it has this year. The run game was still like a little iffy. It wasn't great, but you're still getting Nick Chubb back healthy. He broke off a few runs that were pretty nice, but Jameis Winston, 334 yards passing. Deshaun Watson in 7 games, his career, in 7 games this season, threw for 196 yards, was his high number, high water mark, and 1 game. And say what you want, the Ravens secondary isn't the greatest, but that's a damn good football team. And he threw for 334 yards, 3 touchdowns, a couple balls that could have been interceptions, but weren't. So
if we were going 10 miles an hour last week, we were going 55. We might not be going over 100, right? But in comparison to what we put up there, that looks like a team that's halfway competent.
Yes, 100%.
And I like to see that Njoku was used a bunch.
So. Yeah. Did you know Sunday was National Tight End Day? I almost messaged you and asked if you sent him a card. So
no, I just used him as my wallpaper.
Yeah.
He did it for me.
Okay. All right. That's fair. So the team looked competent. The team looked, to me, it looked like they were having fun. And
that's absolutely right.
And it's like the vibes were different. And I know some people hate that, vibe check or, like I don't really pick up on vibes or whatever that might be. It's like you go out and play hard. The team looked motivated to play for that quarterback. Cedric Tillman looked like an absolute stud wide receiver. Elijah Moore looked like a really good wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy looked like a really good wide receiver. The offensive line looked competent.
Where's Thrash, by the way?
You know what? That's a great question too, because I'm sure he was activated. But I did not notice him in the stat column. I didn't notice him on the field, but that's a really good question, because I would like to see if they do.
Yeah, you put those 4 receivers in front of someone like Jameis, and yes, we loved Cooper and he made a lot of things happen.
Yeah,
but I still think you have way more weapons on that field that you could ever make use of, and I think he's gonna have a field day if they all get on the same page.
I agree, and this team, they're 2-6. And we were talking about how we were so down in the doldrums and whatever. And like the players and the fans were kind of going at it with the booing stuff last week. It's like, it's amazing how one game can change the whole outlook of a season. Now, I am not saying the Browns are making the playoffs. I am not saying the Browns aren't trading players. The trade deadline is next Tuesday. So before our next show, because we're not going to do one on Thursday because of Halloween. But so 1 week from today is the trade deadline. I still think guys are going to get traded, whether that's Zadarius Smith, whether that's Chad Wills, good riddance, or, maybe a defensive back or somebody like that. I don't know. The unfortunate part of this game, there's always good and there's always bad in NFL games because, injuries are part of the game. But JOK went out with it looked like a neck injury. They took him out in a scary situation on one of those back braces, but apparently he's fine. But I don't know his timetable for return. But Denzel Ward, who best cover corner in the league, in my opinion, especially when he's on the field, 6th concussion of his career. And you really got to think. It's like if you're the Browns, you have to shelve him for 4 games. You have to put him on injured reserve, or whatever it might be. Sit him out for 4 games, see how he responds and comes back. It's ultimately him and a doctor's decision if he comes back on the field and plays. But he's got a whole life in front of him, and far be it from me to say play or don't play. That's his livelihood. That's what he loves doing. But you would hate to lose also one of the best corners in the league. But this guy's made a ton of money. He's got, hopefully for him, 60 to 70 years in front of him.
Now let's just say you're a player and you're getting up there in the number of concussion count, right? And it's almost certain that later in life you're going to have some kind of neurological problems, Parkinson's, whatever. Do you play it out now, or do you take it easy and know that you're going to have to deal with whatever repercussions for 20 years?
Yeah, I mean, that's such a hard question to answer, because you look at guys like Junior Seau. Do you remember how good Junior Seau was? I mean, he's a Hall of Fame linebacker, and then had CTE so bad that he ended up committing suicide. There's been all these players. You go back to the Steelers center. I forget his name but he was like, there was a movie called Concussion with Will Smith, and that's kind of like what got that whole, like, the NFL like on guard with the concussions and protocols and keeping the players safe. But I mean, it's a scary thing. I can't say black and white, yes or no.
But if you knew it, if I said, hey, if you play again, we're going to get you healthy enough to be on the field and whatever, but it's almost certain that later in life you're going to deteriorate mentally, and I put those 2 things in front of you, you have to pick one. Which are you picking?
I mean, if I'm not playing, I could extend my quality of life.
Right. I think not certain that you would degenerate like that.
I would think I would have to step away for at least a little while and consider that. And I think, especially if you've made enough money, like Denzel Ward type money, he's probably made over 100 million in the NFL, but you have to think of like the repercussions long term. And money's great, but also having 100 million in the bank and being dead doesn't mean a lot necessarily. I mean, for family it does, but for you, it's like, what are you living for too? So there's a lot of questions.
But I want him still part of the organization, because I think he's the soul of that whole group. And if we can if he's not on the field and he's not putting himself at risk anymore, you need him there to keep those guys going.
Absolutely. And it is a violent game. We get it. But part of the game is possible injuries, but he might want to consider, one of those like skull guardian caps or whatever they call it, or I don't know what the answer is, but Tua did come back this weekend after his several concussions. But at the end of the day, it's like it's the player and a doctor's choice, and if they want to play, I can't fault them for playing. But if it were me and I've made a decent amount of money, and it was all, it was like, hey, like your question was perfect. If you step away, there's a good chance your quality of life is going to be a hell of a lot better than if you go back on that field and put yourself at risk. You could be not with us in 15, 20 years.
Yeah. So, have you ever had a concussion?
I have.
And after the fact, does your brain ever go back to any of the concussion symptoms if something happens?
I mean, the last time I had one, I was probably in high school. Like I think I had 2 in high school, and the one was pretty bad. It was a 2nd-degree concussion, and I was literally like limited, where I couldn't do anything for like 3 months because it was a serious injury. But it's a scary thing where you're not yourself. You're seeing things like, your bright lights are bothering you, and noises and headaches and stuff like that.
Vomiting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're dizzy. It's all that kind of stuff. But and I know these are grown ass men with making grown ass decisions, but I don't care if you're a kid or if you're an adult, you got to factor in long term health and with this stuff. So.
Since my concussion, I cannot.
When's the last time you had one, or how many have you had?
I probably had one maybe 8 years ago.
Okay.
And
can I ask how you got it? Do you remember?
Yeah, my head got slammed in a door.
That will do it.
Yeah,
that will do it. Okay.
I can't like amusement park rides, anything that spins. It F's with my equilibrium. And I used to be able to ride them all day. Now I like almost black out.
Yeah, like vertigo.
Big time. Yep.
Yeah, that is the concussion thing is a scary, scary thing. It is
because you're broken not just when you're injured, you're broken now forever in certain ways.
And they say too, it's like why Tua's was so bad is he suffered one on a Sunday and then he went back on the field on a Thursday and got another one. Like it's like your brain doesn't have a chance to catch up. And I'm not saying it fully ever does, but you're putting yourself at a lot more risk. So Denzel Ward has got to do what especially, I hate to say it, in a 2-6 season, you got to take care of yourself. And, if this was a playoff team, maybe you sit out for there's a whole bunch of hypotheticals here, but he's got to do what's best for him. And at the end of the day, he can be the only one that says it. So, all right, switching to another defensive player on the team. Did you see Myles Garrett's costume?
I did.
The Terminator look. Every year he does something. He did Vecna one year from Stranger Things. He's done, I think, the Jeepers Creepers guy. So he walks in literally looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger from Terminator 2. And so what were your thoughts on that costume?
That, he always he's got such a mild temperament to him, so that he puts so much into his costumes every year. It's almost something I look forward to see what he's going to come up with next.
It is really cool because at his house, I know he puts like the tombstones out of all the quarterbacks he's ever sacked. And I don't think he had like a big impactful game in this game. The defense obviously did its job enough for the Browns to win. But I had heard from one of the national reporters that he had got in contact with like a studio in Hollywood, and do you know how much that costume cost him?
Oh, it had to have been a bunch.
They roughly $100,000. So this guy, when you say loves Halloween, goes all in, he goes all in. So $100,000. So, cause I mean, I think they had to spend hours and hours on the prosthetics and all that good stuff.
I hope it's something he can wear a second time. Cause that seems like, cause all he did was walk from his car into the building and then he probably took it off.
And you know what? I did not see the post-game press conference to see if I'm guessing he didn't wear it to there, but I have a feeling if you have a costume like that, you probably have a Halloween party you're either hosting or attending coming up that week.
Did anybody look inside the face mask and see if he was wearing it during the game? Because that would be awesome.
And like that do-doom. If you that'd been kind of cool if they played that during
you.
By the way, Terminator 2, great movie, one of the best sequels ever. What they should have done is had remember the cop from that movie, Robert Patrick was his name, the actor. They should have had one of the other players dress up like the cop and mold into something and chase after him.
That liquid.
Yeah, that liquid goo or whatever. That was very, very well done though by Myles Garrett. So, all right, looking at the schedule, the Browns are a 2-6 football team, which 2-6 right now sounds pretty damn good with the way they've played most of the year. They play Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers at home this weekend. Then they have a bye week. So as I mentioned, they play this weekend. The trade deadline is Tuesday. Then they're off, and then we see what happens. But the rest of the schedule. So you got the Chargers, you're off. Then the Saints could be that could be a pretty close game. You got the Steelers at home, at the Broncos, Pittsburgh again, Kansas City, the Bengals, Miami, and Baltimore. That schedule doesn't look easy, but all of a sudden now it's like with a competent quarterback, it's like that schedule doesn't look as hard as it looked last week at this time. So I'm not saying the Browns are making the playoffs or anything like that, but I'm saying the rest of the season could be fun, could be entertaining. And last week we said, well, they're still in line for 11-6, so why not? Let's screw around and find out, right? So, what do you think against the Chargers this weekend? What's your expectations? Do you don't have to tell me if they're going to win or lose yet, but tell me, do you expect them to carry this momentum forward, or do you expect them to be a little bit flat after last weekend?
All right, so my personal feelings, and say it with me: F. Jim Harbaugh.
Yes,
that's number one.
All right.
So yes, I think the Browns are going to win only because after I'm Harbaugh.
Okay.
Now, I don't quite know. Like, I think when you shake things up, you have the other team that meticulously game plans against you.
Mm-hmm.
And when they don't know what they're planning against, like you take into account we got a different offensive person calling plays.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that.
With new, the offensive line and a new quarterback, like how much of their plan was vanilla and how much was. So this game that we saw, they might be a little bit more prepared. So I don't necessarily think you're going to have the honeymoon game that we did this week. I think it's going to be a little tighter. But
Chargers do have a really good defense.
So I think it's going to be a little worse than last week.
Okay.
But I think they're going to hang in there and be in this game.
Yeah, the Chargers defense is much better, but their offense is nowhere near the Ravens offense too. So maybe somewhere in the middle, maybe a little closer defensive grinded out game. So
I like it. He was like the golden boy for kicker forever. Yeah. And I cannot believe him.
He's still in the upper tier, but he's not what he used to be. No, that's for sure.
Sad.
That's for sure.
Sorry,
and you brought up a good point that I just want to. So let me tell you this: you could vote for, since we're talking about voting a little bit here, you can either vote for Ken Dorsey calling plays, or you could vote for Jameis Winston as quarterback. What was more impactful in this past game?
I'm thinking Jameis Winston.
Okay.
Yeah, I think 70% of it was the quarterback took control of that offense.
I agree too. I think it was the quick, short decisions and then the play action pass, which we hadn't seen all year really. And then, you had a couple deep shots too, which was so great to see because that looked like the Flacco offense from last year that everybody loved. So as Nick Chubb gets healthy.
And I think part of that is like what we've always said is that if you are, you're quick to act and you dump off to your guys, the pressure recedes a little bit. It's not a rush every stinking play where I think by the end of it, Watson was getting pummeled everything because they were rushing 5 guys because why not? He's going to take it anyway.
Right. Yeah. And even when he had a clean pocket, he was getting out of there. Yep. And but the offensive, like everything just looked competent this week. The defense looks solid. The offense looks solid. Special teams better. So no complaints. Great win against one of the best teams in the AFC, if not the NFL. So love to see it in a division win, which is great. Those almost count as double.
Yeah, but just as expectations, when you had a quarterback like Winston and like Flacco, they put up the ball in harm's way more often. So you are going to get those interceptions more often. We just were on the positive side of luck where those interceptions never manifested. Like you said, if that guy caught the ball, it was end of game anyhow. But I love that he's taking chances and going after receivers because they'll get it.
There is something to be said about taking chances in the league too, because if you're dinking and dunking down the field, there's a good chance you're going to make a mistake anyway. You're going to fumble. The Browns, you didn't see these like pre-snap penalties. Maybe Kevin Stefanski was more on him about that this week. So everything was very refreshing. The coaching looked good. The players looked competent. It was a really good week to be a Browns fan, and we don't get to say that a whole lot this year. So
relish in it.
Love it. Enjoy it, and hopefully it carries over to this weekend.